Okay, my name is Ri Kier. I am a former president of the Modesto Cambodian Buddhist Society, and now I'm a board member of the temple here, in charge of religion and culture.
Hello, my name is Pauline and I am a member of this temple, but I'm also a board member with the Census Interfaith Council.
Buddhism actually is the outgrowth, right? From Hinduism, as happens in India a long time ago. In the Buddha year is 2,566 years ago, and during that time, the Buddha spread the message when he was alive. He spread the message across Asia, and then even after his death, the message was still strong, and people around, especially Southeast Asia, really respect, love Buddhism. And in Cambodia, it was brought in by Jayavarman number 7 and his sons, and that's how it was originated in Cambodia. So it's brought in from India. The 4 main parts of Buddhism is when the Buddha was enlightened. It's first, there's suffering. Second is the cause. There's a cause of suffering, and third is the cessation to the cause of suffering, and then the 8 noble path. That's the 4 main part in Buddhism. And once we understand those 4 concepts, then we understand Buddhism, especially the Eightfold Path, and that include the right understanding, right view, right action, right speech, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentrative meditation. Okay, when the Buddha was enlightened, he found out that life is, in general, including animals' life and human life is full of suffering. And that means that we feel the pain, we feel the suffering every day, every daily life. And then the Buddha said, no, there's a cause of a suffering, like bad karma or the desire. Once you want something and you don't want it, or you cannot get it, that's suffering. So there's a cause for the suffering, and there's a stop to it, the cessation to the cause of suffering, which means to reach nirvana. The Buddhas try to reach. In order to achieve that, he found the Eightfold Path. And that's what I was describing earlier. The Eightfold Path includes right understanding, right view, right speech, right action, right livelihood, and right effort, right mindfulness, and right meditative concentration, or concentrative meditation, or just meditation, make it simple. In Buddhism, every Buddhist followers need to have at least 5 precepts every day. Number 1, the first precept is it's not to kill any being, period, animals or human being. Number 2 is not to steal. 3, precept number 3 is not to lie. And then precept number 4 is not to have sexual misconduct. If you're married, you stay faithful to your wife or your husband. That's all. And then number 5 is not to drink or use any intoxicant or some kind of drugs that may alter your mind when you meditate. So those are the 5 precepts, the most important part in Buddhism.
The celebration, so Buddhism in Cambodia was also brought in not only King Jayavarman number 7 and his son, but his wife also was very vital in bringing Buddhism to Cambodia. And so some of the more important celebrations or ritual that we have are Visakha. You know, the Visakha usually celebrate in May, and this year, 2023, will be May 5th, same as Cinco de Mayo. So Visakha marked the enlightenment, the day of his birth, the day of his enlightenment, and the day of his death. He's born on a full moon in May. So Visakha is celebrated, and I believe it is recognized by the UN.
In 1999.
Okay, 1999. So besides Visakha, we also celebrate the Makabochia. We call it Miekbochia, and Miekbochia is a few months before the Buddha's death. We call it meaningfully. Back then, no social media, but like a few thousands of monks.
2,500 monks.
Yeah, they came together without any kind of communication. They came together to listen to almost like the final sermon from the Buddha. So we call it Makabochia. Yeah. And for Cambodian, we also celebrate New Year in April. Very strong celebration. And another is the Ancestor Festival. We call it Pshomban, around October, November, where the ancestor, because you cannot have Buddhism without having some cultural tie, and I'm Cambodian, so that's how we celebrate it around Ancestor Festival and in October or November, where we honor the loved ones, whether they're alive or dead. The role of women in Buddhism. So there's two main branches of Buddhism, Mahayana and Hayana, which is the Theravada, which I belong to. So I'm going to be speaking on the role of women in Theravada Buddhism. So a long time ago, the female woman can become enlightened, achieve Buddhahood, but somehow along the line, the nature of male and female, having in the same space, occupying the same space, they violate some ethical codes and policy, and so the female can no longer be monks, but they can be nuns. Okay, they can be nuns, and that's in our tradition. So there's a few female that are prominent in Buddhism, and one of them was Visakha, and she's a great patron, and it has been said that she attained a level of enlightenment since she was 6 or 7, and she went on to become very pious to the Buddhist community. She supports the Sangha, the Buddhist community, and she had a temple that housed Buddhist monks during the rainy season. And then there's other important female figure like Suchita, who fed the Buddha when he was fasting. He didn't have anything to eat, so she brought milk and some other food and gave it to him. And from then, and he had energy and he was able to think. So that's important. But I know there's other Buddhist monks right now that are female. But the way that I was explained to is that there was a female Buddhist monks that achieved enlightenment. But then after that violation of ethical codes, the Buddha said no more. And so those female died and they cannot go on. So there's no live monk to initiate the next monk. So it dies, the tradition died right there. Just like in a gang member, if you're not initiated, you're not a member. So even if there's a female monks claim to be monks right now, according to the Buddhist policy, it wouldn't be valid because there was no live monk to initiate you into the process. So what I've learned also is that if you're female, it doesn't matter, you are respected, very respected, but you cannot, no matter what level of education you have, in terms of teaching Dharma, not anything else, you cannot teach it to the monks. You can only teach it to the general population, but not to the monks.